Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prairie Kitchen at Under a Tin Roof. Today I'm excited to share our Victorian Halloween Special with you. Halloween in the Victorian era was lively and wild. If you can imagine carving jack-o'-lanterns, cider drinking, bobbing for apples, or having a big boisterous barn dance, then you're in the right time period. This time of year was one when Victorians could be a little bit silly, play games, and spook each other with rituals of all kinds. Games and occult rituals in particular were reimagined and passed down from medieval and pagan celebrations inspired by the Celtic festival of Samhain. We can trace back many of the scary stories that we know and love today to the 19th century, stories like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and even the stories by Edgar Allan Poe. In this episode, I will be showcasing 2 recipes that were served at Victorian Halloween parties according to some ladies' magazines that I researched, and I will also be sharing an Edwardian recipe. We will be learning about some of the games that they played, and my mom and I will be having a tea leaf reading to predict our futures. And we will end our episode with a traditional bonfire and nut burning. I hope that you enjoy this episode and it inspires you this Halloween season. So let's get to it. In beginning research for these recipes, I first decided to look into what Halloween was like during the mid to late 19th century. The Victorian period was from 1837 to 1901 when Queen Victoria ascended the British throne. Queen Victoria herself was absolutely fascinated by Halloween, and it was said to be a celebration that was as large as Christmas. The Queen was intrigued by folklore and legends of witches, demons, spirits, and the occult. The Halloween festivities at Balmoral Castle were reported by the Staffordshire Sentinel in 1874 as such. Her Majesty and the Princess Beatrice, each bearing a large torch, drove out in an open phaeton. The procession, formed of the tenants and servants on the estates, followed. All carried high torches lighted. They walked through the grounds and round the castle, and the scene as the procession moved onwards was very weird and striking. In 1881, it was reported that there was a witch-burning ceremony, and Princess Beatrice was part of the scandal. When the flames were at their brightest, a figure dressed as a hobgoblin appeared at the scene, drawing a car surrounded by a number of fairies carrying long spears, the car containing the effigy of a witch. A circle having been formed by the torchbearers, the presiding elf tossed the figure of the witch into the fire, where it was speedily consumed. This act of cremation over, reels began and were danced with great vigor to the stirring strains of Willie Ross, Her Majesty's Piper. From what I could research, it appeared that hosting and attending Halloween parties was at the height of fashion. Costumes, games, and food were high on the list, and a good hostess put a lot of effort into her decorations. I first decided to look into which foods might have been served during these parties. I found an old menu clipping from the Ingalls Home and Art magazine published in 1891. It suggested baked oysters, roast turkey, chestnut stuffing, baked apples, salted almonds, cabbage salad, hickory nut cake, and walnut ice cream as a few menu options. The first recipe that I found was for popcorn balls in the Housekeeper's Encyclopedia by E.F. Haskell, first published in 1864. Boil honey, maple, or other sugar to the great thread, pop corn, and stick the corn together in balls with the candy. To make the candy, she says, after the syrup is clarified, which is known by a thin skin appearing on the surface, strain it. Then put it again on the fire, boil slowly, trying it often by taking a little between the thumb and fingers. If in opening them a short thread forms and quickly breaks, It is said the syrup has reached the strength of the little thread. A long thread of greater strength forms, it is called the great thread, and it is said then to have reached the first degree. Sounds slightly dangerous as the candy for other popcorn ball recipes using corn syrup are cooked to the softball stage, which is 235 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I found mention of making Indian pudding, or a pudding made with cornmeal and baking it inside of a pumpkin. Indian pudding is the oldest documented American dessert, a hasty pudding created by the first European settlers using the cornmeal that they traded with indigenous Americans. I first looked at The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy by Hannah Glass, first printed in 1747, but later updated in 1805 for American recipes. To make a baked Indian pudding, 1 quart of boiled milk to 5 spoonfuls of Indian meal, 1 gill of molasses, and salt to your taste, putting it in the oven to bake when it is cold. Then I looked into Housekeeping in Old Virginia, published in 1879 by M.C. Tyree. Take nearly 1 pint sifted meal and make into a mush. Pour over it 1 quart of boiled sweet milk, add 1 gill of molasses, 1 gill of sugar, 6 eggs beaten separately, half a pint of chopped suet. If you like, add a few currants, raisins, or a little citron. Bake nearly 2 hours. Eat with sauce. The sauce that I chose to go with was this one. 1 pint cream, half pound sugar, 1 tablespoonful butter, 1 glass of wine, seasoned to the taste. Do not let it boil. I also decided to try making candy apples, which were actually created in 1908 during the Edwardian period. I have always wanted to try making these, and they are so nostalgic for vintage Halloween, it seemed only fitting. I found a vintage recipe that did not use corn syrup, even though corn syrup was available during the Edwardian period. Let's head out into the orchard and then back into the kitchen to make some yummy Halloween party treats. To begin, I picked some delicious red apples from our trees. Many recipes recommend using Granny Smith apples, and their suggestions are correct. Using soft, sweet apples does not work the best. The candy actually ended up cooking the apples internally after I dipped them. For this recipe, you need 8 apples, 2 cups granulated sugar, 1/4 teaspoon cream of tartar, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, and 1 cup water. Before cooking, prepare a piece of parchment paper by greasing it lightly with butter to prevent the candy from sticking, and set aside some candy apple skewers. Poke all of your apples and set them aside for now. You'll bring the sugar mixture over to the stove and stir it, cooking it to the hard crack stage, which is around 300 to 310 degrees Fahrenheit. This takes about 20 minutes. I read a tip in The Joy of Cooking by Irma Rombauer: set a pan of hot water aside to keep your candy in.
Oh my gosh.
This proved to be a terrible tip. It caused my candy to harden almost immediately. I decided to try reheating the candy, and this was also a terrible idea.
Yuck.
I ended up burning the candy almost immediately. Dipping them in nuts was also bad. That needs to happen literally as you are dunking them in the candy because it hardens so quickly. got 2 good apples out of this batch, and so I tried again. This time I put the finished candy on the counter and dipped them, and the candy stayed hot enough for about 25 minutes, and then it started to harden up again. To prevent bubbles from happening, you should avoid whisking the syrup like I did. Honestly, these were a lot harder than I expected, but I was able to make them work, and they were actually really yummy, and my kids loved them. The next recipe we're going to make are popcorn balls. This was another candy that I assumed was going to be incredibly easy to make, and it was actually slightly difficult for me to figure out. I began with 2 tablespoons of cooking oil and 1 cup of popcorn kernels. Then I combined 2 cups of sugar with 1 cup of water and cooked it to the softball stage at 235 degrees Fahrenheit. I poured the candy all over the popcorn and stirred it up. Many modern recipes recommend greasing your hands, so I rubbed mine down with butter and got to work. It did not work. They would not stick together at all. I was hoping for this light caramel corn texture, and it was a complete flop. So I hopped on ye olde phone and started over again. I honestly could not find a recipe that worked without corn syrup, so I resorted to using it. This was my first time making popcorn balls, and I needed to understand how they formed together. And it did work. However, they were completely gross. I also was lazy and left all of the unpopped kernels in. I don't recommend doing this. I hated the sticky, chewy texture of them. However, my mom said they tasted exactly like the popcorn balls she had as a kid in the 70s, so the recipe does work. I just personally did not like it. This recipe will have to go back to the drawing board for a true 1860s representation. Halloween parties were at the height of fashion in the Victorian era, and many of them included games. These games generally were focused around predicting the future and matchmaking. Many women spent their evenings trying to make a guess at who their future husband was going to be and what his occupation might be. On the other hand, games for men tended to be more physical. This included games like bobbing for apples. One game I read was tying a raisin to a string and then tying that string to a pole, spinning it around and seeing if you could catch the raisin in your mouth. One way of predicting the future was by hosting a tea leaf reading. The Victorians had an obsession with the occult and spiritualism, which was kickstarted by the fascinating tale of the Fox sisters, who claimed they could speak to the dead peddler found beneath their home in the 1840s. Art of tea leaf reading is called tasseography or tasseomancy, and many Victorians would have hired a tasseomancer to come to their party to read leaves or coffee grounds.
Oh my gosh.
Proper Victorian
Let's
lady.
see. Get in here. Okay. So it says to toss the cup involved spinning it anti-clockwise in the left hand 3 times with the dregs swirling around, and the dregs were flicked upside down into a saucer, getting rid of the remaining liquid. The fortune teller then said about divining what the talking tea leaves had to say. Oh, and then I read too that some people said you had to spin it clockwise. This one says counterclockwise, and then some people said left hand or right hand. So I don't know which one is which. It's like all across the board.
Say if mine is negative, then I'll try the other way.
Say your reading is wrong because you did the wrong hand.
Right. Correct.
This also said after flipping the cup, tap the bottom of it 3 times. Okay. This helps to spread the leaves out. And we're doing well because you're supposed to use ceramic or porcelain cups, and the interior should be white.
Oh, excellent.
Without any decorations to complicate the reading.
And being the maximalists that the Victorians were, they also created teacups and saucers that had symbols on them specifically for tasseomancy.
You're supposed to use a strainer, and when you have half of a teaspoon left, you swirl it in the cup and flip it over.
Are we drinking this tea? Or...
Yeah, we're going to have to drink the tea first.
Okay, I'll drink it with all the leaves in it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, then let's do this.
Yeah, you're not supposed to strain it.
All right.
Okay. Ooh.
Hot though.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cheers. Do we clink glasses in tea or no?
Probably no.
Probably no.
Everything we do is probably no.
Do you have any other fun facts you want to share about Victorian Halloween?
Boy, do I. Oh, this says the spirits always speak first, and you should assign. You're okay?
Just had one speak to me. That was hot. Okay. Go ahead.
It's telling you that you should allow your first instinct to recognize what you see and not like overanalyze it.
Okay.
In the 1840s, I guess there were these 2 sisters from New York that made claims in the news that they were speaking to the dead peddler that was buried under their house, and then their dad went down there and like actually found this body. And I'm pretty sure they started having like public seances or private ones where people would come.
Are they claiming that they did not know this person was dead?
Yeah, they didn't know that the body was down there.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, and they start the movement of spiritualism in the Victorian era.
Okay. I mean, people are still fascinated with it. Television shows where people are looking for ghosts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are we supposed to be thinking something while we're drinking this?
Actually, you are supposed to be. You're supposed to be looking inward.
Oh, it's exactly what I've been doing the whole time.
While you drink your tea, and that will give you a better reading.
All right, so you're going to tell me what these readings, or where we're headed with the reading.
Yes, and turn inwards about your life or questions about your future. So the leaves in the middle of your cup are more immediate events that are going to happen.
Okay.
Leaves on the rim are remote events, and leaves that settle close to the handle are significant events. Oh. Your reading is about like traveling or someone coming to visit you. The handle can mean south, and then the opposite you would go like a compass.
Okay, so my question is, when are we doing the turning?
When you get to about a half teaspoon left.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm getting there.
Like when you can start to see the leaves, I'm going to guess.
Careful there, because I got a leaf. What does that mean? Swallowed a spirit?
You swallowed your future.
Oh, no.
Your left hand, you swirl it counterclockwise 3 times.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yours counterclockwise?
Yeah, I went... Oh, no, that's clockwise.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Oh. You've already screwed yours up.
No. Okay. You flick them upside down into a saucer. I tap at the bottom of it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to look. Oh, my tea leaves fell out.
One. Coming over, I feel like, because it's close to the handle.
Mine are all on the rim.
Oh.
A do-over. Like
the shape of it?
Yeah. So some shape ideas are an axe,
Okay.
Angel,
Nope.
anchor,
Nope.
apples,
Okay.
arrows, birds, a boat, a bouquet, a bridge, a butterfly, ox, a goat, greyhound, a gun,
Nothing.
a hammer.
Apple.
Okay.
Like just a circle.
It means long life and success in school or business.
Excellent. I'll take that. It's coming soon because it's close to the handle, right?
Yeah, there's significant events.
Nice.
Yeah, mine is dots.
Okay.
Definitely leading up to the top.
Cloud.
And it settled on the rim. Well, I kind of thought it looked like an anchor.
It does look like an
Times.
anchor. Okay.
Anchor is good luck in business and a stable love life.
Well, what more could you ask for?
But yeah, there's our tea leaf.
I liked it. I'd do it again.
And you're supposed
10
to...
out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. And the tea was pretty good too.
The tea was really good. It was a little hot, but...
It's time to make our final recipe, an Indian pudding baked in miniature pumpkins. To make this Indian pudding, you will need miniature pumpkins, 1 cup yellow cornmeal, 2 cups of water, a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 cups milk, a 1/4 cup of molasses, 3 large eggs beaten, and a 1/2 cup of chopped suet or butter. I made the recipe according to the directions from 1879, which doubles this amount, and it made enough to fill 2 9x13-inch baking pans. It was a lot. Also did not have any suet on hand, so I decided to use lard from our hogs. This was a mistake. It created the wrong flavor for this dish, and it would have been so much better with butter. To begin, make the cornmeal into a mush by cooking it with the water and salt. This cooks for about 5 to 7 minutes or until thick. Meanwhile, scald the milk. Add this to the cornmeal mush along with the molasses, eggs, and suet. Stir everything together and set this aside. If you are using mini pumpkins, this will make about 8 of them. Cut off the tops and hollow out the center. You can keep the seeds to roast later. Fill up the pumpkins with the pudding and bake them in a 250-degree oven for about 2.5 hours. The finished pudding should be set around the edges and a little jiggly in the center, similar to a pumpkin pie. I decided to try making the rich pudding sauce. This was made with heavy cream, sugar, butter, and red wine. The recipe recommends using 1 glass of wine. My husband and I tried to determine how much a glass of wine would have been in 1879. We discovered this was anywhere from 4 to 8 ounces. I went for a 1/2 cup, which is around 4 ounces. This was absolutely disgusting. I am personally not a fan of red wine, and the smell alone was enough to make me want to throw up. We each tried a spoonful and declared this recipe awful. Instead, I decided to serve the puddings with some simple heavy cream and a grating of nutmeg, and then it was time to taste them. They were just okay, if I'm being honest. I wish they were sweeter and I had used a different type of fat. Lard was certainly not the way to go for this recipe, but the consistency and texture were spot on. I do believe that this recipe would be delicious with some improvements, mainly more sweetener and butter.
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
This is the dumbest thing we've ever done.
Oh!
I knocked an apple off.
Hey!
Wasn't that fun? I absolutely loved learning about Halloween in the Victorian era and the early 20th century and sharing it with you. Time period is my favorite for many reasons, but growing up I was highly attracted to Halloween in films and in books that were inspired by the Victorian period. I guess it just goes to show that you know what you love from an early age. I truly hope that you feel inspired and ready to make Halloween traditions, whether they are new or old. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, I would absolutely love that. I post every Friday and we talk about food and history, and I usually make some recipes and they don't always turn out the best. So this is my space to experiment and try to make historical recipes according to the directions rather than try to modernize them. I also post videos almost every day to our Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook channels. If you would like to support me and my family, I have a Patreon and I post 2 to 3 videos and recipes each month for $5. It's a huge support to me. I would love to grow our Patreon, so if you feel obliged to join, I would love that. Otherwise, there's plenty of free content here and on our blog at underatinroof.com. You can find the recipes in this episode on our website. They're all listed there and you can print them out or save them or pin them however you would like to. I'm so happy to have you here and I will see you next week. Love ya. Okay, bye.